afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. It is Saturday, July 5th, and you know what that means. It's time for the High Risk Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, evolving, moving forward, Jeremy Pierce. Welcome one and all. Check out the socials, Charismatic Creations on Facebook and YouTube, Charismatic_Creations52 on Instagram, and of course the 215 on Twitter. And today's show, we're going to be looking and talking about NXT's Big Four loss on the women's side of things. It's the second time they lost a Big Four, and they've had to reintegrate new talent, revitalize the division, and we'll see how they're doing with that. But for now, you know what's next, so just go on and hit my music. Today's list is very, very simple. These are the 5 worst NXT Women's Championship reigns. Now, originally was going to do this about the person themselves, but it's the reigns that's more important. And we start with number 5, Raquel Rodriguez. Then in NXT, she was going by Raquel Gonzalez, and she had the unenviable task of following up on Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. And up until that point, the NXT Women's Championship was carried by pretty much Hall of Famers from beginning to end. And Raquel Rodriguez, with her limited wrestling ability, could not live up to the lineage and the history and the prestige of that championship. Number 4, Dakota Kai and Raquel Rodriguez, NXT Women's Tag Team Championship, their first reign. This reign is on the list because Dakota and Raquel got screwed out of the Dusty Cup finals, and there was argument between William Regal and Adam Pearce. So the following week, the NXT Women's Tag Team Championship were created, given to Dakota and Raquel because they rightfully earned it, and then they immediately put it on the line, losing to Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart. So their reign lasted less than a day, and for women that got screwed over in the Dusty Cup, this just didn't seem right. Number 3, Stephanie Vaquer of the NXT North American Women's Championship. This reign also lasted less than a week, and this is here not because of Stephanie Vaquer, because she is a phenomenal talent and is a star in this industry, but she had become the first woman to be dual champion in NXT. She was the North American champion and the women's champion, and Ava made her relinquish the championship, saying, hey, you can't defend both. That does not make any sense, because men on the main roster have been allowed to defend multiple championships they've held to, and this is going on too many times in NXT. Number 2, Charlotte Flair, the NXT Women's Championship. This one hurts so much. Charlotte Flair had won the Royal Rumble during the year of the pandemic, went on to challenge then NXT Women's Champion Rhea Ripley, and defeated her in a fantastic match. You thought that Charlotte being champion would elevate the division, but no, it was a complete burial of the NXT Women's division. Charlotte ruled over everybody and did not elevate anything. It took a long time for the women's division to recuperate and be better, coming from Charlotte's horrible reign. At number 1, Mandy Rose, NXT Women's Championship. It's very, very simple why Mandy Rose was on here. They pushed her to be at the top of the division, which, fine, but when your talent is subpar and not equal to every single person they had her defeat, that makes your reign bad. She's one of the longest reigning. I believe she's the second longest reigning NXT Women's Champion, only second to Asuka, but they had her beat Roxanne Perez and Alba Fire and Isla Dawn and Meiko Satomura, and too many women had to submit and succumb to the subpar Mandy Rose. We'll be right back. The spotlight is back on and is shining on none other than our current NXT Women's Champion, Jacy Jayne. Who would have thought that Jacy Jayne would be the last member standing of Toxic Attraction? Now leading Fatal Influence, she has to overcome this idea that she is nothing more than a transitional champion. Yes, it was very, very shocking that she became NXT Women's Champion, defeating Stephanie Vaquer. But here we are, and she's got to take the ball and run with it. Part of that comes to her being booked like a competent champion. But we have seen the story of her having to prove herself and letting those insecurities take hold, and it's actually working for her. Backed up by Jasmine Nix and Fallon Henley, she should have a solid ring. We will see what's next for one Jacy Jayne, because going from Toxic Attraction to her tag team with Gigi Dolan to Fatal Influence has been a solid career move. Where that leads to, we don't know, but I would like to see the elevation and push for her just a little bit more. We'll be right back. NXT has been, for the most part, a great training ground for women in professional wrestling. Following in the footsteps of who truly started the women's revolution, TNA Wrestling, don't let anyone tell you differently, NXT has shown itself to have a propensity to take women's wrestling seriously. It's funny that their development brand took women's wrestling more seriously than their main roster. And for, I want to say, more than 60% of NXT's history, starting with the Black and Gold, the women have been the main focus of the roster, of the brand. So today's show, we're going to look at how the new Big Four, losing them, has affected the roster, and where do we go from here. So we're going to start with a brief history of the NXT women's division. And when it started, we had the early years with solid talent of Natalya and Paige and Emma and so many others, and it just worked. We saw this collection of not only beautiful women, but a diverse grouping of women: Nikki Cross and Asuka and Ember Moon and Shayna Baszler. There was so much early good talent there, and some floated, some sank, but it was there, and we saw the growth that was going. And one of the best things that happened was the women started getting main event matches, not only on the weekly television show, but also on the takeovers, their pay-per-views. They started getting things like the women's tag team Dusty Cup in accordance to the men, and they started getting the War Games match in accordance to the men. It just worked. Everything that Triple H was doing was working for the women. The main event matches, the diversification in their not only talent but their characters. Everybody wasn't the same. And then, honestly, the really, really big step was getting War Games. And you go, oh wow, okay, we're really doing this here with the women, and it worked. And a big part of that was the Four Horsewomen. For the longest time of the early years, NXT was built around four women: Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, and Sasha Banks. They were collectively known as the Four Horsewomen, and the division was built around them. Yes, we had talent like Athena and Asuka and Shayna Baszler and Liv Morgan and Carmella and Summer Rae and Nikki Cross, Saraya and Natalya and Emma. But the division revolved around these four women, how they could elevate it. And Becky Lynch was probably the lowest on the totem pole. She never won. She's the only woman of the Four Horsewomen to never won the NXT Women's Championship while in NXT. But she was the one that was really finding her voice in NXT, going from that Irish jig gimmick to not really having a voice until she really found herself on the main roster. Then we have Charlotte Flair, who was the first of the 4 to win the women's championship, and she had the prestige behind her name with her last name being Flair, and the talent was there. But she also didn't really, I want to say, succeed in NXT until she got to the main roster, where she truly found her voice. Because let everybody know this, we all know this, I know this, the 2 really big stars of that women's division was Bayley and Sasha Banks. These 2 were the 2 women who elevated women's wrestling in the WWE. Their legendary feud in NXT, their main event matches at takeovers, were a thing of the whole. I stand by this, truly. I truly stand by this. The second Sasha Bayley match is the most important match in the WWE over the last 15 years. Over Shawn Michaels' retirement match, over John Cena's heel turn, over Cody finishing the story. Sasha and Bayley were the 2 most important figures in NXT. And they were allowed to branch and feud with the likes of Athena and Asuka, who really was the next big name in there. And it really, really just worked. The Four Horsewomen were so integral to not only NXT, but the overall WWE, that there was no choice for them but to succeed. So after the 4 women were slowly called up to the main roster, Becky, Charlotte, and Sasha were called up first, followed by Bayley. It was like, who would replace them? We had Asuka, we had Ember Moon, but they really put their eggs into a few baskets that ultimately failed. So we had Charlotte Flair winning the women's championship. Charlotte Flair was on the main roster. She had won the Royal Rumble. This was the year of the pandemic. She went on to choose Rhea Ripley, who was the current NXT Women's Champion. NXT UK had lost Rhea, and I believe Toni Storm. They were called over. So Charlotte chose Rhea. Fantastic match. Charlotte won. I hated the decision, but I could see why Charlotte won. So Charlotte wins, and the NXT Women's Division suffered. It suffered badly. No one was presented as a credible threat and as a credible challenge for Charlotte. Buried Rhea, buried Bianca, the 2 future stars of that division. And it took a very long time for the division to recover after Charlotte's title loss. There was a triple threat match, Charlotte, Rhea, and Io Sky. She was going by Io Shirai at that point. So Io wins the match. Charlotte can screw off to the main roster, and we're trying again. We have Rhea, we have Io, we have Shayna, we have Kyrie. Kyrie and Shayna were having their just wonderful feud coming out of the not the women's, the Mae Young Classic. So that was all well and good, and it worked. After the stink of Charlotte left, the women got better again. Then we had Raquel Rodriguez. Well, she was going by Raquel Gonzalez. We had her reign, and I understand putting the championship on her. You needed a big hoss, a big heel, a big monster, because they really haven't had one in that entirety of that division. No true hoss of that division. Nia Jax never won the NXT Women's Championship. So why was the reign so bad? When you look at the history of the NXT Women's Championship up until Raquel's reign, her name stands out because she's just not in the same company as everyone that held the belt before her. So it was a lot to live up to, and it ultimately didn't work. And then finally, Mandy Rose. Look, I get why Mandy Rose was given the championship. She's an attractive woman. She's competent in the ring, great control of her character. But what hurts the NXT Women's Division was they had her beat the top talent. She beat Alba Fire. She beat Isla Dawn. She beat Mako Sotomayor. She beat Roxanne Perez. She beat women that are just better than her. And it never made sense. You can be competent, you can be good, but it cannot be believable that, hey, Mandy Rose is going to beat these women that just eclipse her in every way in the ring. And it was just bad for the women's division. And her reign lasted a very long time. Her reign was almost 2 years, and it was right. It would have been disrespectful to have her surpass Asuka, but she didn't. And Mandy reigned, even though she was a quote-unquote dominant champion, she was probably the worst champion in the history of the NXT Women's Championship. So after we get through all of these failures, right, we move on to the new Big Four. And 3 of them have already been called up to the main roster. We start off with Jordynne Grace coming over from TNA Wrestling. We saw this collaboration between NXT and TNA, effectively NXTNA, and Jordynne Grace has pretty much been, alongside Tessa Blanchard and Deonna Purrazzo, the faces of the TNA Knockouts division. There was nothing left for her to do. She's done everything. She's still the only woman to win the Call Your Shot gauntlet, right? So she comes over, and now we have some more strength of division. Yes, we have Lash Legend. Yes, we have Zarya. I know I'm missing someone who's also been like a hoss in the division, but Jordynne Grace was the one woman in the division who eclipsed everyone in terms of accomplishment, because she's coming from another promotion. So while we have Jordynne Grace here, we have Julia. Julia comes over from Stardom, and she's wrestling that strong style of wrestling, heavy hitter, and she was presented also as a mega star. She said herself she was shocked that fans knew who she was when she was shown at one of the PLEs. So Julia is another woman who, okay, you're next. Then we had Stephanie Vaquer, and let's not get this twisted. People only knew who Stephanie Vaquer was because of her match with Mercedes Moné at Forbidden Door. None of you mainstream folks who want to slob knob Stephanie knew who she was. Top talent in CMLL, right? Top talent in wrestling, sometimes in AAA. And Stephanie and Mercedes just put everything on the line, right? So you've got Jordynne, you've got Stephanie, you've got Julia, and then you have the face of the NXT, the women's division, for like 3-4 years, Roxanne Perez, the prodigy, the young star. Roxanne's not even 22, and she's called a prodigy because she is that good, going from the belovable underdog baby face to being this conniving heel, but she's able to back it up in the ring. And she pretty much held down that women's division while they were trying to find their footing. She was the face. She is the prodigy. She will always be the prodigy. Now, yes, Tiffany Stratton was solid during that time, but she was called up to the main roster. Yeah, she is as a former NXT champion. So is Lyra Valkyria. But they never really felt like, hey, we're going to build this division around you. Jordynne, Julia, Stephanie, and Roxanne were the faces. I'll even throw in Cora Jade, but the Big Four, these were the women that carried NXT week in and week out. You don't believe me? Look no further than the tag team match at the 2300 Arena. It was so important for them to have this match that they even aired NXT on Wednesday opposite AEW Dynamite, because the women were so good and so beloved that it would be believable that, we would tune into this match over Dynamite. The match featured, it was a 5-on-5 tag. On one side we had Fatal Influence, Jacy, Jayne, Fallon Henley, who was the North American champion at the time, and Jasmine Nix, teaming with Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez, who was the NXT Women's Champion, again, taking on Zarya, Stephanie Vaquer, Kelani Jordan, Julia, and Jordan Grace. These were the women that ultimately held it down. And we had 3 of the good ones on one side. So now that, you know, Jordan, Julia, Stephanie, Roxanne carry this division, it was only inevitable for them to be called up to the main roster. Jordan is still in NXT right now, but it's a win, not if, she gets called up to the main roster. Julia's already on the main roster. She is your new United States champion. Stephanie Vaquer is going to win a belt at some point, and Roxanne Perez is already tag team champion, and she's going to have a bunch of women's championship reigns. So you're going to lose these big 4 women. So the question is, who is next? Who can you rely on? Who can you count on to ultimately hold the division down? And there are a lot of women in NXT. There are a lot of talented women in NXT, but you can really focus on, and you know who they want. Zarya has joined NXT, and first she was presented as like this really big monster, but ultimately she's been able to show some personality, and it's working. She's been growing each and every week. She's already talented. She was one of the big names that they brought in with Julia, with Stephanie, with Jordan, and Zarya is someone you know is going to be there for a minute, and she's always going to be in the title picture. And then how about her tag team partner and our current North American Women's Champion, Sol Ruca, they love coming back from her injury. She has probably the most exciting finisher in all of the WWE, the Soul Snatcher, and they believe in her. They truly believe in her. And I'm waiting for the inevitable split and the inevitable feud between her and Zarya, and it's going to be a thing of beauty. How about our current NXT Women's Champion, Jayne? Who would have thought that she'd be the last woman standing out of Toxic Attraction? Mandy Rose got fired, Gigi Dolan got fired, and Jacy is still here, and she's in another faction now. She's the champion. So they clearly see something in her. And you know what? Do it. I believe in giving everyone a fair shake, booking them right, and seeing if they sink or swim. And how about Kelani Jordan, the longest reigning NXT North American Women's Champion, the first North American Women's Champion? They love Kelani, and I can see why. She's beautiful, she's talented, she's skilled in the ring, and now we're starting to see some development in her character. It's only a matter of time before she gets elevated, probably to that position where Roxanne was, because she could honestly be the ultimate face of that women's division. She's probably the best face out of all the women wrestlers in NXT. And lastly, Lash Legend. Yes, it sucks that they released her tag team partner. I do not know why they released Jakara Jackson. Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson were probably the best tag team in NXT. They worked together well. They knew their roles. They knew what to do. It just worked, and now they just gone. They didn't even get the whole tag team go. We were all expecting them to get caught up to the main roster and be dominant in that tag team division. But when it comes to tag teams, especially established tag teams, you always see that there's one person they favor more than the others. And let's be honest, it was always going to be Lash Legend. Metaphor is no more, and Lash is the hoss. She's probably the hoss of the women's division, and they see something in her. They got to start establishing her as a singles competitor and having her grow more and more and more. Now, yes, there are some other names in the NXT Women's Division who that they could potentially, put their faith in. We have, Cora Jade's now gone, but we have Fallon Henley. I don't really see them putting their trust in Jasmine Nix, but we have, like I said, we have Fallon Henley. We have obviously Blake Monroe. She might be the one name I excluded, where, okay, it's on and popping with her. She might end up being the true name, the true top face of that division. So we have Blake Monroe, we have Fallon Henley. They see a little something Izzy Dame, and there's Jada Parker. I might have to redo this list, but I'm going to add Blake Henry and Jada Parker to that list as well. Jada and Blake are in that category with the other 5 women. Jada and Blake are special. It's there. The only thing keeping them in NXT is that the main rosters are already bloated. And I think they see just a little bit of something in Ren Sinclair. But our 7 women who can carry that brand, Zarya, Sol Ruka, Jacy, Jayne, Kalani, Jordan, Lash Legend, Blake Monroe, and Jada Parker, they are it. And that's a good grouping of women to build around. I'm excited because the NXT Women's Division knows how to replenish itself every single time they lose a top talent. But that is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Look at what the screen wheel we got coming up for the month of July. It is all in next week. I am so excited. Check out the socials, Charismatic Creations on Facebook and YouTube, Charismatic _ Creations 52 on Instagram, and of course the 215 on Twitter. I see you when I see you. But hold on. Priscilla Kelly, Isla Dawn, Bailey, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, and Anna J. Holla at your boy. Peace.